Welcome to Sheemore. Sheemore is an incredible location between Leitrim village and Keshcarrigan village, and it's remarkable because of its archaeology and the view from it. It's got three cairns, the northern cairn, this large cairn here that's got a 1951 crucifix on the top, that's illuminated at night, and a southern cairn. So there's three cairns up here. There's also a 180 metre by 110 metre oval enclosure that could be prehistoric. There's another small D-shaped enclosure with a hut circle that might be prehistoric, and post-medieval field boundaries crossing the hill. So from an archaeological point of view, this is really an extraordinary place. But also the view is a 360 panorama, looking up into North Leitrim, into Fermanagh, looking east into Cavan, going down into Meath even, Longford to the south of us, across into Roscommon, up into parts of Sligo. You can see on a clearer day, it's a beautiful day today, but it's a bit hazy, but you'll be able to see Quilca Mountain to the northeast. On a super clear day off to the west, you'd even see the peak of Crowpatrick. So it's one of the reasons why this hill perhaps was chosen in prehistory to put these cairns on the summit, was because of this view. These are passage tombs. So passage tombs are monuments dating to the Neolithic. So with the arrival of farming to Ireland, one of the reasons why this summit, which is about 173 metres above sea level, why it was chosen by the people who built the cairns, was because of the panorama, this incredible view. It's connecting places. And these were built, these passage tombs, what they are, were built sometime in the Neolithic. At a reasonable guess, anytime between around 3,300 to 2,900 BC, from radiocarbon dates of similar type monuments, like the ones you find at Carrowkeel in South Sligo, not far from here, which is actually visible from this spot. The Neolithic period is the time when farming arrives to Ireland, sometime around 4,000 BC. So it's when domesticated plants like wheat were introduced, domesticated animals, cattle, sheep, goat and pigs arrive in Ireland, and a whole new order, a new way of looking at the world happens. And these Neolithic people, they start having permanent settlement, and they start building megalithic tombs. During the Neolithic period, there's kind of three types. There are court tombs, which have generally a gallery with a court, and burials are put inside in the chambers inside in these monuments. Then portal tombs, famously Poulnabrone and the Burren, and there's a number of really good examples in Leitrim. And then passage tombs. A lot of Irish passage tombs, though not all, are built up on really spectacular sites on mountaintops and hilltops, often with remarkable views. And as you can see, this place is phenomenal. And it's kind of a way perhaps of connecting with other places. So you can see Carrowkeel from here, you can see over to the southwest at Sliabh in Roscommon, which has a cairn on the top, and another 1950 Holy Year cross. To the south of us then we have Corn Hill in Longford, with passage tombs on the top of that. So it looks as if they kind of often are looking at one another. Unfortunately, these monuments are damaged, and we don't know their orientation. However, the north passage tomb seems to have an alignment perhaps at the equinox sunset, so it's looking west, west-southwest. So about nearly 20% of passage tombs in Ireland have orientations at celestial events, so sunrises or sunsets, often the summer or winter solstice, the 21st of June or the 21st of December. So famously Newgrange in the Boyne Valley, probably Ireland's most famous passage tomb, it's orientated at the sunrise on the 21st of December, the winter solstice. And Newgrange is like a mega example of what we see here. It's up on over 80 metres in diameter, while these are about 27 metres, and the smaller ones are half that size. So we have this little complex, but there's two other passage tombs in the valley, or possible passage tombs, near us, and famously Sliabh, not too far, just on the other side of this cairn here. And Sliabh was excavated by a school teacher from Swanlinbar in 1930, and he found two skeletons and what they call a brain ball. Now, brain balls it's probably actually a polished stone ball, which would be common to passage tombs in terms of the type of objects you find in them. So you tend to find a decorated coarseware pottery called Carrowkeelware, named after the passage tomb cemetery or passage tomb complex just across the Turlough Mountains from here. But you also find bone pins, polished balls of stone, pendants and beads. So not far from here at Fina, there's two passage tombs and a really good example of court tombs and a portal tomb there. And again, there was an excavation carried out at one of the passage tombs at Fina back in the early part of the 20th century, and stone pendants were found along with skeletal remains. Now, when the excavation happened at Sliabh, or the amateur excavation done quite crudely by this school teacher, they found these two skeletons and they called them giants, and everybody believed it was Fionn McCool. It's kind of interesting that a lot of these passage tombs dotted around Ireland are often associated with, in mythology, so often hundreds or thousands of years later after they were built, people see them as otherworldly dwellings. So the name She, people often refer to, translate She as fairies, but it's not really. The She tend to be the two of the Donnan. They're often described in kind of folklore as tall, shimmering, almost blue-coloured supernatural beings that can be benevolent or malevolent. The story is about Sheemore, is that if a queen of the She lived here, and she had a disagreement with the queen of the She who lived at Sliabh, and they had a battle, and Fionn McCool, apparently in some folk collections, Fionn McCool fights with the queen of Sliabh. The host from here defeat the Sliabh, and Fionn is killed and is buried in the tomb, and that's why people thought the folk tradition is correct when the excavation happened in 1930. But what you tend to find is when these are excavated or explored, that you find often predominantly cremated, but sometimes unburnt individuals, and it's a collective burial in chambers. So these would often have a passage, a stone passage, leading to a chamber often with recesses coming off the central chamber, forming almost like a cross-shaped or crucified form, with human remains in the chambers, with pottery, beads, pendants, bone pins found in these chambers. So they're collective burials from men, women and children. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're high status people, so there's various interpretations. Interestingly, the Sheemore, Sliabh story, which was really well known in this neighbourhood, Turlough O'Carolan, the famous 17th century harpist, he had been learning to play the harp in Ballyfarnan in Roscommon. And he was blind. He went blind from smallpox. But he had a horse and a harp, and he went travelling. Lady MacDermot Rowe had given him a horse and was his patron. But he went to Squire Reynolds at Lough Score and heard this story of the Queen of Sheemore and the Queen of Sliabh in this folkloric battle. And that inspired him to write his famous tune, She Begs Sheemore. So it's that very, very famous tune by O'Carolan is all about this place. So it's kind of interesting that maybe back in the Neolithic there could be assemblies of people here carrying out some kind of ritual activity associated with the dead ancestors that are contained in the chambers, and that this enclosure is enclosing this sacred space. A bit like entering a church or entering a mosque, that you're going into this kind of whole, almost maybe religious hilltop with this incredible view, and the monuments themselves almost act like a piece of sacred architecture, where you're going into where the dead are contained. So you're touching the sky, you're in the world of the here and now, but this world of the here and now is almost even otherworldly because you're enclosed in this large oval enclosure. And then you go into the underworld, the world of the dead, the world of the darkness. So in kind of religious studies, that's called an axis mundi, a place that connects different realms of the cosmos, the world of the sky, the world of the underworld, and the world of the here and now, and they're all linked. So kind of cathedrals do the same thing. If you think about the spire, the altar, and then often underneath the altar you have the crypt containing relics of a dead saint. So it's kind of like these cosmic connectors, almost, is how it's described in religious studies. And I think something like that is going on here. It's kind of that idea of sticking the cross on the top that happens. Pope Pius XII declares 1950 as the Holy Year, and it was celebrated all across Ireland between 1950 and 1951. And the locals here, through often donations, they got it together, and it cost them £300 and a lot of labour to haul concrete up on donkeys and on sledges to build this cross. It was unveiled in September in 1951, and there was thousands of people up here, and there was a sermon. Archdeacon Donoghue read a sermon, and there was speeches. The Kilturbert Cayley band, a pipe band, played up here. So if you can, 1,000 people up here on the unveiling of the cross. It took a while. The electricity was only arriving, so it took a while to be illuminated, and it wasn't until 1966 that it was permanently lit. So there's LED lights now, but there used to be floodlights lighting it. So quite spectacular. And again, it's a kind of religious idea of this place dominating perhaps a pagan site subconsciously, and again touching the sky and being noticeable in the landscape. And these passage tombs do that before the cross was built. If you travel around parts of Leitrim, Sligo, Roscommon, throughout the country, you'll often see these hilltop cairns. Now, not all of them are passage tombs, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to have a technology to look inside some of these hilltop cairns and figure out what date are they. They could be Bronze Age, but some of them could be other passage tombs. And so, like, there's only 6 confirmed passage tombs in Leitrim, 2 probable ones. So we have 3 of them here on this summit, 2 at Fina, 1 at Sheebeg, and then 2 down in the valley below us. But while Sligo has 10 times that, there's over 80 passage tombs. So you have the big complexes at Carrowmore, Knocknarea, Cairns Hill, at Coolira in Sligo, just outside Sligo town, and then the big complex at Carrowkeel in the Brickleaf Mountains. And then to the southeast of us we have the Lough Crew Hills in County Meath, and then going further down into the Boyne Valley you've Newgrange, Nowth and Doubt. But dotted between them, often on hilltops, like down to the south of us at Cornhill and Longford, up on the top of Sliabh, and below Sliabh and Roscommon you have Sheeriva, where there's a cluster. So you get these little clusters or small complexes like this. And it could be that they're positioned in routeways, that people are supposed to see them, and maybe there were stories told about them and people could navigate. When you see the cairn at Sheemore, you travel through the valley, and this valley connects the Shannon system to the Erne system. The Shannon-Erne Canal is just below us here. So it could be a place where these are, you know, belonging to a particular group, and their ancestors are contained in here, and they're venerated as people travel through this landscape. So they're meant to be seen, and that they could be aligned then with other groups, perhaps. And the passage tombs are kind of maybe looking at one another almost. So perhaps the two cairns on Cornhill and outside Longford might have some relationship with the people here. So there's lots of possible theories about what they might mean in terms of, but the thing is, a lot of them dominate the landscapes that they inhabit. And as you can see here up on Sheemore, that these monuments really do that, particularly the one with the massive mid-20th century cross on the top. So before the Shannon-Erne, because you can see the canal below us, yeah, you can see a bit of it over there, the bridge, and then you can see it very clearly going into Leitrim. But the waterway, that didn't exist obviously until the beginning of the 19th century. But there's still little tributaries, little rivers going out of the lakes, heading into the Erne eventually, and heading into the Shannon. So this is almost like a watershed place, you know what I mean? That it's, if you're moving by water and you're delivering, or have polished stone axes, or raw materials like flint. Flint doesn't occur here. The only place you get flint is on parts of the west coast, on beaches, but mainly from Antrim, or particularly polished stone axes. And interestingly, I didn't mention that earlier, but just below us there's 3 or 4 caves. They're really hard to get to. But in the school's folklore collection there was a description of a green axe being found. It's not in the museum, it's just mentioned that a green stone axe was found. So green stone, it's very difficult to say what type of axe it is, but often as not, axes get traded and moved around. So people are moving, ideas are moving, and that this is like an interface between different areas through this kind of the drumlin landscape of South Leitrim, coming up maybe from places like Feenagh, or coming along the Erne and Shannon systems. It's almost like a place of convergence, perhaps. So that hill, the kind of one, it's below the horizon line, grassy hill with a clump of trees, that's where Sliabh is. So that's the kind of other dwelling of the host of the She. The kind of hill in the haze behind that is Sliabh in County Cavan. Coming over there, you can actually see Quilca now, which is the furthest one away, popping its head up with the cliffs on the right. And there's actually a little cairn and a couple of hut circles up on the top of that. Then you're coming into the over to Sliabh on Erne. Interestingly, there's no cairns on the summit of Sliabh on Erne. I did some work years ago on Sliabh Donard in County Down, and on a clear day you can actually see Sliabh on Erne from the Mourne Mountains, which is pretty unbelievable. Then you're coming down into North Leitrim, you can see Loch Allen in the haze, over to Arigna, the wind farms in Arigna Valley, into Kilronan Mountain, in kind of part of North Roscommon, South Sligo border, and then you're coming across over the Highwood, some drumlins, high drumlin ridges near Knockvicker. Then the next ridge is the Brickleaf Mountains where Carrowkeel is, and Keshcorran Mountain. Then you've got the Curlew Mountains stretching out. And then you're kind of, like I said, on a clear day, due west is Crowpatrick, and then you're coming into Roscommon.